and you're watching to the Black Eagles podcast, a Beşiktaş talk show.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru aksın kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Numa. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet. Ve gol!
Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. I'm here live today with Ural Alhan doing the Kettle Pinches. Ural, we're here to talk about, or give our live reaction rather, to the Congress that just finished, the vote that just finished. Lots of important stuff got voted on. They led in with the main event, the Dikilitaş project, that got a yes. Were you expecting it to get a yes?
Yeah, I think so. In the end, yes.
I had my
a long.
I have to admit I had my doubts because, you know, as a Beşiktaş fan, we're so used to being gluttons for punishment. I just thought, I don't know, because like obviously they deliberately painted it as this is the only way out of this mess for Beşiktaş, which I think was very deliberate. But as somebody who follows the club really closely, I thought there was a bit of fear-mongering going on, but I don't necessarily think that the fear-mongering was like malicious. Like, you know how, not to get too political, but sometimes, you know, they use fear to get people to do what they want, while that is not in their best interest. In this case, I do kind of feel like, okay, they did that to get them to do what they want, but it's also the best option probably right now for the club, because I honestly don't really see a way out of the mess to do what they want that we're in, you know?
Yeah. So first question I had actually for you was, how do you feel about this outcome? Because it has been discussed a lot. There was a lot of controversy, not only about the way they presented it, but also a lot of formalities surrounding it. There were a lot of opinions on this. So how do you personally feel about this outcome today?
Yeah, I think it was the only decision to make, right? Because I think the only alternative was obviously to vote no, but then I think that would just mean the club would stagnate and regress. And I think this was the only option out of the two where you have the potential of moving ahead and hopefully getting out of this hole that we're in. Because if the vote would have been no, then you know the outcome. Then nothing changes. Things may only get worse. And now at least you have the possibility of maybe it going the right way. Whether it will or won't, we don't know yet, but at least there's a sparkle of hope now, right?
Yeah, certainly is. So there's clarity on liquidity for Adam. So he knows what he can expect going forward. He has a plan to repay the bank debt. He tried two other things that didn't work out. So he was running out of options, to be honest, to solve this. So this was definitely, especially for him, I think this was very crucial because he didn't have any other plans, and I don't want to be too well. At least he didn't discuss any other plans. Yeah. So it seems assets, real estate, that would be his way out, which is also very logical because I think from the start it was evident that he was not going to provide any other plan or pay this out of his own pocket, and I don't think you can expect that from somebody that's as president. Of course, you expect something, but not an amount like this. I don't think that's fair to expect from anyone. So that makes it very crucial what happened today, and I think also he felt it as well that this was a very crucial vote, and the reason why he did it so quickly also, I think, because he really needs to have visibility on the budget, right? What the budget of the club will be going forward this season, next season, and based on that, he wants to make his plans, which is also very logical, because if you have to going forward, if you have to pay 50 million or let's say 30 million in interest, that's quite a big chunk of the budget that the club has. So it makes sense that he wants to be quick with this and have an approval.
Yeah, because otherwise it would just be another season thrown away. And I think he called the Beşiktaş football brand, he called it the locomotive of the club the other day, because of course, the basketball team is doing great right now. And of course, the volleyball team for years has been doing fantastic. And there's lots of different branches that do well. But let's be honest, the club gets towed by the football branch. If there wasn't a football branch, the club would be, a lot less significant than it is right now. Let's be honest, it's all about the football at the end of the day. And yes, of course, now Beşiktaş fans are into basketball. It's kind of, mirroring Fenerbahce the last decade or so, where they were like, they haven't won anything in football, so but their basketball team is doing well, right? So let's go watch some more basketball. I'd like to point out, I went to the basketball game in Europe in 2005 when Beşiktaş played Charleroi here in Belgium. So just
cool. All right.
For the record, but it's
also investment, right? Let's be honest. The other branches don't get the attention, but also not the budget that might. So performance-wise, they could be more significant than they are at the moment.
Yeah, if we would invest the same amount of money in our basketball branch that Efes or Fenerbahce invest in theirs, with the way the coach is how he works right now, Dusan Alimpejevic, I think if you give him a budget of 30 million, then you will see Beşiktaş be a top team in Europe in a couple of years. But of course, is that realistic to invest 30 million euros in a basketball branch right now? Maybe not, right? But maybe down the road, maybe this can open up those avenues for investing more, not just in the football branch, which I think most people care about, but maybe also the basketball branch is going to get a boost in the next couple of years. Alimpejevic just signed a new 2-year contract, and maybe his budget is going to be increased as well this coming year or the year after. But let's talk.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, me too, of course. He deserves it, right? If you can see what he is achieving now already, coming close to the Turkish League title, who knows what happens in the next couple of days. Also doing really well in Europe. But that's neither here or there. Of course, we're here to talk about this Dikilitaş project and all that kind of stuff. So this got the approval. I think that was the big win Adala wanted. And really, if you look, he kind of got all the counts he wanted, right? He got Dikilitaş, he got the vote for that. He got the yes vote for the longer rental agreements. He got the yes vote for what were the other points? I'll bring it up here for myself, because
So there were 6 articles in total, starting with the number 4, from 4 to 9. Those were brought up. I think also what we discussed last time. The first one was the most important one, I think, for Adal as well, which is the Dikilitaş project. The second vote was on doing new real estate projects, so adding new assets and then developing it, etc. So not existing ones to be short on that. And then there was Beşiktaş Plaza, so renting that for a longer period than 10 years, and they want to make a hotel out of it. That got a yes vote. Then there was the vote on the gas station that was denied. And then a vote on selling the additional 90% shares. That was also a crucial one for him, or an important one for him, and that also got a yes vote. So basically 2 rental extensions, so to say, rental contracts, rental agreements. Those were refused by the by this meeting.
And something I wanted to touch on before what you said is that this was probably like his last plan, or at least the one that he announced. But at the end, I think from the beginning it was clear that this was his end game to go with this project. But I think what he probably wanted with the capital injection, he probably was hoping for getting us out of the bank union agreement already, and then this would just all be pure profit. That instead of having to pay $100 million off of the 200 million euros or whatever he's projecting to get out of this, he could have, in theory, then invested that $200 million into the club rather than use half of it to pay off the debt that's still outstanding. So, of course, I think it's understandable that he moved forward with the capital injection before that. So I don't necessarily think that's like, okay, he ran out of ideas. Okay, I think at the end of the day, this was his big plan. It wasn't exactly the big plan that he led with during the elections, because then... but so you are right in that, of course, that this is not his original real estate plan, but it looks like a really good one, especially because 75% of the land required to get this off the ground was already owned by the club, whereas with the whole plot of land between the airport and the city that nobody really knew where it was. That was
Never land.
Yeah, exactly. That was a more complicated thing. I still wonder what's going to happen with that, if they're going to try and move forward with that in the future. What do you think?
Well, so currently there's no agreement with the landowners, which was also a little bit expected, to be honest. That was his big project, but he still wants to develop it, because I think there are some parcels that are already sort of assigned to Beşiktaş. I think he wants to follow up on that, and he already talked about it, to create training complex or facility there.
Okay.
And he also reiterated this in a meeting just now, when people talked about, okay, what's going to happen with all the facilities at Dikilitaş? Where is that going to go? Well, part of it is going to go to Akaretler. Did I say it correctly? And then, but he still wants to have that option at Kemerburgaz, so to say, to also have a training facility there. So he's going to do both. That's what he said.
Is it
Akatlar? Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say
Right.
it's going to Akatlar, right? Because yeah. So also an interesting point, maybe, because you said that the vote, the getting those 90% shares, being able to sell those in the future. That could, right now, we talked about this a while ago, like that's not going to be a lucrative thing. But if he gets this Dikilitaş project off the ground now, and it turns out to be a huge success, those 19% shares could have a lot of value down the line if they increase to 6 tele, 7 tele, whatever, 10 tele, whatever. There's that possibility, of course. So if the Dikilitaş project is successful, that could impact the club shares, the value of the club shares, and if he then has 19% left to sell, okay, maybe that will impact the share price, but still, it's probably much better than the 2 tele, it's roughly 2 tele it's worth right now, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. So also with that article, it makes sense, right? There was an additional 90% obtained, so let's not discuss the way how that was obtained and etc., but it's there, right?
Yeah.
So there's 90% that could be sold because you still keep majority of the shares, 51%, and they took out that you're able to pledge the shares, which was could be quite dangerous as per our last analysis, and they took that part out. So what only remains is selling that additional 90% shares whenever they deem fit. Although underlined and stressed, he said, okay, I'm not going to sell it just like that. There will be a process, and I will inform, I'll even ask approval again from everybody, from this general meeting before I sell it. But I want to have this so that we have the possibility to do it at least. And then he also stated that when the value is higher than currently, right? So he wants to obtain more money from it than it's currently valued at, which all makes sense. So I think that article, the way that it was changed, that was really good. That was necessary, in my opinion. And then that's why I think it was much less controversial, and it with all the I'd say that it was very logical that was approved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it gives him a tool to make extra revenue whenever they deem fit. So that really makes sense.
And before we get into like all the stuff that got approved even more and what that could mean for the club going forward, let's talk a little bit about the things that didn't get approved. The gas station extending their lease of or rental agreement has been rejected. Also, Asçıoğlu, their extension of their rental agreement has been rejected. So they are going, well, we'll have to move forward with the eviction process, I imagine. But you mentioned something interesting in our WhatsApp community. Adala doesn't look super happy with this because he realizes it might end up costing them 10 million or something like that. Can you explain why exactly what the fact that the gas station rental agreement is not getting extended, why would that cost the club money?
Well, what's done there, and to be fair, this was already a deal that was brokered by Hasan Arat, so by the previous board.
Mm-hmm.
It was already there, and he already got the approval. So, what's sort of conflicting here for Adal himself? He didn't broker this deal, but there was a signature missing from the board, and he needs to have that approval to go ahead with that agreement. But again, it was already approved by the general meeting to enter that agreement with that gas station, and now everybody is upset about it. Which, like a year ago, everybody just approved and we moved on.
Yeah, that's curious, though, right? Why? How did that just slip through the cracks a year ago? Because this issue with the gas station rentees has been going on for 21 years, if I'm not mistaken, since 2004 or something. Yeah. So how did that manage to get approved last year, and now suddenly everyone's up in arms about it? That seems weird.
Yeah, it's also presentation, and you came from a different position, right? It's because you have to imagine that before Hasan Arat's reign, so to say, not a lot of people knew about these assets that the club owned.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to open all the archives, etc. I'm going to show what we have, what we don't have, etc. And he, I think, was one of the first board members that really listed, say, okay, we have this, we have this, we have this. These are the contracts, and we need to do something about the situation. And he listed a lot of assets that even people that follow the club closely didn't even know about, that the club owned them. And then he started telling about, okay, the gas station was a known asset in that sense, so it wasn't that big of a surprise. But he gave insight on how much money the club was being paid for rent, which was very low, and how this was sort of not fair for the club, and we were basically screwed out of a lot of money. And from that basis, he said, you know what, I'm going to negotiate a better deal for the club, right? To improve what we have, and not going too much into detail, saying, okay, you know what, it's going to be plus 50 years, or what he's going to say, instead of 145,000 lira per month, we're going to get 1.1 million, and we're going to make the contracts as such so that it's correct for inflation. Every 5 years there will be a revaluation of the property, and thus the rental price. So all sensible adjustments to that agreement. So when that was presented, I think everybody thought, okay, you know what, that's a huge improvement from what we have, and we normalized that situation, not knowing that we could also that wasn't even a discussion, right? Can they be evicted? Can we cancel things? How can we deal with this? And after that period, so the whole ordeal with Adal coming into office, etc., the elections, a lot of more details popped up about this and how twisted the situation is with the gas station. And with that new information, I think a lot of people realized, okay, maybe the deal that we did, or that the club wants to do, is not a beneficial deal, because the counterparty, we cannot trust that counterparty. So why are we entering that deal? So that's why people react different. In my opinion, people react different to this agreement. And now Adal has to solve it or deal with it, while it wasn't his agreement in the first place.
Yeah.
But I must say, you can still go and renegotiate it. So it's also not I think, too big of a deal in that sense. But he thought, okay, you already approved it, so let's just approve it. I'll sign it, and then we're done with it, and at least we don't have the headache. And now I come to the 10 million. We are in a legal discussion with that, with the renters of the gas station, and they have a counterclaim. They have a counterclaim at the club for $10 million. And they say, well, Adala stated that experts say that they will lose that case. So most probably the club will have to pay $10 million to that gas station. So if we don't extend with them now and don't settle with them now, because part of the settlement is that they will forfeit that case, that $10 million damage case. And that would mean if we cannot come into an agreement with them, we want them out, that would mean that they will pursue that case. And it might be, if Adal is right, that we'll have to pay $10 million.
Yeah.
But I think the sentiment at the meeting today was like, it doesn't matter, we need to have this legal battle and we'll fight until the last bit, because we don't want them there anymore.
Yeah.
Which I also understand. So
Yeah,
that's the story behind
you
this.
don't want partners especially long term, that have in the past already bit your hand. You don't want to work with people like that. If you are in business with people that you cannot really trust, and they're snake oil salesmen or whatever, why would you continue going into bed with those types of people? Like, it's better to get rid of them and try and find new suitors. I mean, given the prime location of this gas station, it's even possible that, okay, maybe they win their 10 million case, but maybe we can make enough money from a new potential renter, and
Of course. And that's not the problem. The problem is that, again, if you don't settle with them, you'll have to deal with this contract and with these legal cases up until you finalize it. But I think that the general meeting, everybody was very clear about this, and everybody's fed up with people that are taking advantage of the club. So I really understand the sentiment. And Adal also said, okay, it's up to the general meeting, general assembly. If they say no, then we'll deal with it, right? And I think it was a good outcome. Yeah. Because extending it on this basis, while I understand it's nice to have those proceeds, etc., it's also not that much. That one player it costs us more than dealing with this. So yeah, I'm happy about this result, particularly for this vote. So for the gas station.
So it's understandable why Adala put this on the agenda and why he maybe would have probably preferred, let's just get this over with. But then there's the whole Asçıoğlu case. That is a little bit more puzzling in my opinion, because we already have a winning case on our hands here, apparently, where I believe there's a settlement where they have to pay us 3.6 million euros or something like that. Is that right? Which Adala was throwing out, essentially.
Yeah. So this is really quite muddled, and I agree with you, and I don't understand. Well, the motivation of Adala, I think I can understand, but it doesn't make sense in my opinion, especially with the information which came out just a couple of days before this meeting. So the idea is that there's an existing renter, of course, in Fulya in our previous project. They don't pay rent. I'm going to tell it very shortly. They don't pay rent. We start the case. They need to evict the place because they didn't pay rent, etc. You won that case, so we have a right to evict them at the moment. Right? That was also the deal why we could change the sign on the building. That was purely based on this case. They are now trying to delay that case with the counter cases, etc. And they're fighting their eviction and also counterclaiming. I don't know on what basis, but they're counterclaiming as well. That still doesn't prevent the club from evicting them. So that's there, right? Now, for some reason, Adal was saying, okay, you know what? Instead of having legal fights, because he said they will stay until 2033. And we cannot evict them until 2033. So instead of having no rental income, legal fights, we can deal with them. They pay less than they owe us because they're settling on the amount, and we'll get parts of the building that we can rent outright. Because curiously enough, this renter, they have their own floors, but also the rest of the building is rented out by them. So they get the rental proceeds, but they never paid us. I don't know why we agreed on subletting our own building instead of renting it out directly.
So they are renting these floors from us, and then they're subletting them to other companies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is their logic behind not paying the club for so many years? Because with the gas station, you explained it last time, there was an issue with the hospital being nearby, and they had to move their tanks. So they said, okay, we have to make expenses for this, so we're gonna pay you a very small amount for X amount of years. That is, you can understand that to an extent, right? But what is Asçıoğlu's argument here? Why aren't they paying the club? Like that makes no sense.
No, and that was never sort of directly explained. So I really don't know, to be honest. There must be some sort of made-up reason, like there needs to be some renovation done in the building, etc. And as owner, you are responsible for parts of it.
But you can't withhold years and years worth of rent. And also, I mean, even if they go into a legal battle with them now and they can be evicted until if you're not paying your rent, the 2033, sorry, that's 8 more years down the road. So how can they not pay rent for 8 more years and not get kicked out? That doesn't make any sense. Like, how does that work in Turkey?
Yeah, because the dispute, there's a dispute on these type of costs, right? And I don't know if they are valid or not. I don't know the case from inside in that sense. So it could be that you have that you can deduct that from the rental obligation as long as the situation continues and you're fixing it yourself. I don't know if that's the exact case, but the problem is it's apparently, according to our lawyer who won this case, Ms. Altan under Hasan Arat's board, she was the one who led this case and basically won this eviction case. She said it's not true. 2033 is not the case. You can evict them within 6 months. So why does the club feel pressure to go into an agreement, an extension of the rental agreement, if we can evict them within 6 months? And why are we forfeiting money of which the judge already said that they need to pay that to the club?
Yeah.
And that's why this is so muddled. Why is this being presented? Because this deal was not a previous board member deal. This was Adal's own deal with Asçıoğlu.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why he presented this
and
to the meeting, other than I don't want headache type of thing.
Yeah, and personally I find it worrying, because if you remember when the whole hanging up of the flag propaganda thing happened, Adal was the first one there, remember? He was there with the flag and with the crane, and he stated live on TV at the time, I've been friends with Asçıoğlu for 21 years, he said. So then to me, that is like, oh, and like we just won a court case against them. They're supposed to pay us 3.6 million euros. And you're just willing to let all of that go. That to me sort of screams nepotism, or, you know, something along those lines. Maybe that's not the case, but that's what it looks like to me, if that makes sense, right?
Well, I think your hunches are not wrong, because Asçıoğlu is a very good friend of Ahmet Nur Çebi. They go way back. Their families, etc., are very close. And also, and that's where things also get a little bit more tricky, is that Ahmet Nur Çebi also signed that whole gas station deal, or wanted to extend that gas station deal even before Hasan Arat for a very low amount. Hasan Arat stopped that whole situation. So the thread here, the red thread through the story, in the storyline, is still sort of these ties with Ahmet Nur Çebi, or with Demirören, or even with Sardar Adal himself.
All people he is close to still to this day.
Yeah,
and that makes it that is also, I think, why people in Congress were very... Because, I mean, he said smartly so, oh, but, this is not something I want. I wanted to pose this question to the Congress, and you get to decide yes or no. But I think it's pretty clear that if he would have had his way on this case, it would have probably been just sweep it under the rug and,
I think so too. Yeah. He would say, okay, great, yes, I'll sign it and let's be done with it.
Yeah.
But so that's why I'm happy with, especially with these two, with the outcome of these two, because I think we need to cut ties with these people. And yes, he might have a friendly relationship with them, whatever, but it doesn't benefit the club at all.
No.
So they need to get out.
Exactly.
We need to get proper corporate renters.
Yeah.
And have actual revenue from this.
And Asçıoğlu, aren't they a legal firm or something like that?
No,
okay.
I think they're in construction, and they were part of the whole Fulya.
Yeah, they were part of Fulya. That's true. Yeah.
So we were also screwed, I think, in the whole Fulya project.
Mm-hmm.
By them.
Yeah,
so,
I read a quote where he said, "Oh, I didn't screw the club. I even paid $2 million more than I was supposed to," or something like that. Let's get to the question here. We have a question from somebody who's watching right now. Kaan, it's not me. Kaan asks, I don't understand the whole Dikilitaş project. Is it just a long-term rental of Beşiktaş land for other companies to build on? Would you mind answering that, Ural?
Yes. No. So Dikilitaş is a project on parcels of land surrounding Fulya. So if you look at Fulya, we have our buildings there. And surrounding that, we have training grounds. Those training grounds are prohibited to build on. So there's a non-building ruling there from municipality and also the ministry, etc. That ground is owned, or that land is owned by the club. It's in full ownership. And what the project is they want to add another 5,000 square meters to our already 15,000 square meters, to have 20,000 square meters, and to build 40,000, to have a built area of 40,000 square meters. That's what they're going to develop. Mm-hmm. And the idea is as follows: it will remain fully owned by the club. And even they want to add that 5,000 square meters. It's going to be bought from the ministry, or it's going to be exchanged for another asset. And Emla Konut is going to basically arrange the whole project, building it, etc. So they will arrange for a construction company and things like that. And they will only get 80% out of the proceeds of that project. And then
8%, right? 8.
Yeah, 8%.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did I say?
It's 8%. I thought I heard 80, but might have heard wrong.
8%. And they also want to include Ziraat in this, but let me keep that out for now. And then the club is going to sell. So once that project is developed, or even pre-development, they will sell these apartments or commercial areas. They will sell it up and until 125 million, which is, let's say, the money owed to the banks. Once that's paid out of those proceeds, the remaining apartments, part of the buildings, etc., will stay in ownership from the club. And they will either rent it or can sell it at a later moment. So we are not. So we're partly selling and we're partly renting it, but we keep ownership in that sense.
Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, no, it's not just renting out of land. Businesses are actually going to go in with other firms. Like Emla Konut is, related to the ministry, so it was probably going to be a lot easier to get approvals for permits and stuff like that. So things can go pretty quickly. It will also make it easier to acquire those extra 5,000 or those 5,000 square meters of land, because we have to get that from the ministry. And like Ural said, there's a possibility of Beşiktaş buying the land or exchanging it for another plot of land located in Ankara currently, a plot of land that our great president Süleyman Seba acquired years and years and years ago. But if you think about it, there's not really much Beşiktaş can do with a plot of land in Ankara, given that the club is obviously situated in Istanbul. I mean, there could be a possibility, of course, for maybe, just using my imagination, building a youth facility in the center of Turkey. That could be interesting, of course, but right now I don't think the club has the money for that. So it is definitely something that is supposed to, according to Saladala, bring in about 400 million euros, and at least 200 of that is supposed to go to Beşiktaş. But of course we'll have to wait and see, because as Grey Wolf says, I am skeptical to all of these people and their motives. And of course, given what happened with the whole Fulya complex, which we just talked about a little bit before as well, or you alluded to, Ural, we have been burned before on these real estate projects. So we have to be a little bit careful. But I think, I don't think they'll be able to pull the wool over our eyes twice, hopefully. Grey Wolf also says, it just seems they are only interested in their own personal gains other than the club's interest. We'll have to wait and see, right? That is something that we'll have to wait and see. It is definitely true, Ural, that this is something they could have never gotten off the ground without the club, because I think you mentioned this in the WhatsApp community. The land of Dikilitaş is actually sports designated land, right? Mm-hmm. So in order to do this project, the only way to do this is if it's done through the club, because we are a sports club. An individual could never buy this plot, or a company could never buy this 50,000 square meters off of the club and then do it themselves, because they would never get the right permits and the approvals and all that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of like a backdoor way to get this project off the ground, because the club is doing it essentially. So they need the club to do this.
Right? So you also cannot do it without Emlak Konut, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that area is indeed is now sort of designated as non-built. So it's just like with everywhere in the world, you have a parcel of land. You cannot, let's say you have 100 square meters, or it's maybe not much, but let's say you have 400 square meters. You cannot build that full 400 square meters. You cannot make a building of 400 square meters on there. Depending on sort of what type of building it is, you need to keep some garden, some area, green, etc. When you do this, and this remaining land, so to say, is that green part of the whole Fulya project. When the Fulya project was designed, the municipality said, okay, 15,000 square meters need to stay green, so to say. And because it's Beşiktaş, etc., they allowed sporting ground, etc. There's a good function. It has a public function, and now Adalet has found a way, saying, okay, that land that has a public function, we can change that, and we can put a building there. Mm-hmm. And nobody can do this. They would never allow this, so to say, and doing it in cooperation with the ministry or with the government. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's impossible. They would never allow a building there because of the what the land is designated for.
Yeah.
So
in principle, it's very low value land. Like you can probably compare it with, it's not residential land, so you can't build a house on it. No. It's more like, it's woodlands. So it's like worth, like, instead of being worth 2 million euros, it's worth 50,000 euros or something. It's very worthless. Exactly. But because of the fact that with working with the ministry, we can upgrade this essentially to residential land, and it becomes a lot more valuable. But the only way to do this is, of course, by having Emlak Konut involved and all that kind of stuff, and having the ministry involved. And I'm sure there will be plenty of back scratching going on. Ömer Gunal says, not a single reliable face up there, including Adalet. So what can you tell me that is proof that things are going to get better? Well, is there any proof that things are going to get better?
Well, I think one of the arguments, I understand the skepticism, I understand a lot of people said it there as well. We even eat ice or yogurt with I would say with cooling it because we are afraid to burn our tongue, or our tongue is so much burnt at the moment of the past projects that we don't trust that, which I completely understand. And what gives a little bit of confidence is one, I think, with the Dikilitaş project, whatever you think of it, the fact that it's not so that there's no value at the moment, or not much value at the moment, you can make it very valuable by doing this, right? So not doing this is not going to help you in the long term in any case.
Yeah.
Now that they've said yes, and getting this will definitely create revenue. Will it be 200? Will it be 150? We have to see, but it will definitely, there will be some proceeds. There will be some serious proceeds from that project. That's for sure. So that will definitely help the club to a great extent. Also, and this remains tricky, but knowing that those proceeds will come, you know how to deal with the budget for the coming years. So transfers, I think, can also be based on that. So he will plan his transfers also. Yeah, also based on
this
that.
This is something I actually wanted to ask you, because there's been a lot of speculation online over the last week or two from football journalists that once the vote happens on the 22nd, that will also gravely impact Beşiktaş's transfer politics going forward after the 22nd. So now that he got his yes, do you believe, Ural, that Beşiktaş will actually be able to spend more money than they would otherwise? Because now, of course, they know that in X amount of time, there will be a serious revenue stream coming in. And also, hopefully, if Sirat is included in the deal, that will alleviate further interest payment pressure. And if we can, of course, then pay off the full debt, then there will be no more interest payments, which this past season and the season before was up to 50 million euros of interest alone. 50 million euros, you have to imagine Beşiktaş's budget is around $100 million. So over half of that is being paid annually to interests on a loan. So if Beşiktaş can get out from under that, and of course in the meantime alleviate the interest pressure through the involvement of potentially Sirat in the project, do you think that is something we're going to feel straight away? Is that speculation justified by the journalists online, you think?
Well, not entirely, because two things. It's one, it's including Sirat so that you get some alleviation in that sense, but also changing your debt to euros, right? That should also create a little bit more liquidity, because you have to pay less.
What's the interest payment on euros right now in Turkey? Do you
it's
know?
Much less. It's not 46. Yeah, I don't know, but it's not 46% for sure.
Is that maybe more like 15-20% or something like that?
Lower, I think even. I think it's even lower.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's lower. It's much lower. I'll try to look it up, but I think it's much lower. But don't forget that if your revenues are in TL, you have that problem, of course. But it will on the short term, it will give you some more room. What I think what they're alluding to is that transfers are usually paid in installments. So what you can do is that, let's say you agree with Sherlock or with Atletico. You say, you know what, the first installment is 2 million, and then the bigger installments we will pay a year from now or 2 years from now, based on those revenues of that project. And that will enable you to buy then bigger transfers. Is that very wise? Well, that's a question mark.
Exactly.
But that could be a trigger. And if he doesn't have that, then he wouldn't want to engage in such a transfer, because he doesn't have those proceeds even a year or 2 years from now. So I think it's very much tied to this, that, like I said, liquidity planning, and on that basis making transfer deals. But he also complained with Eugenio saying, okay, but Rafa, Ciro, etc. The biggest payments are all in May. 2025. So you left sort of the biggest financial obligations for after you're in office.
Yeah.
So now I have to deal with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would then do the same, basically.
Yeah. And I did some playing around there. I created the chat was appearing on your face on the
okay.
But now it's there's a nice little designated area there just so people can see the chat. Umer
Right.
says, to be honest, we will probably forget and move on the moment they announce 3 transfers tomorrow. I think that's very hopeful to expect 3 transfers tomorrow. But this is interesting what you're saying though, Ural, because I hadn't even considered that, because really if you think about it, it does become possible all of a sudden now with this approved that Beşiktaş can start signing players of 10, 15 million. And there was even talk about, Seller and Dikilitaş said something along the lines of, Beşiktaş, if they really want to, and they find the right player who is of the right age and potential and blah, and blah, and blah, Beşiktaş can pay...
A human being.
Yeah, Beşiktaş can pay up to 25 to 30 million euros for a player. But if you think about it, I think I'm not saying it would be smart, because I don't think it is. But in theory, Beşiktaş could do that, because if, like you say, the payments are spread out. For example, you buy someone for, let's say, 30 million. You pay 10 million up front, then you pay 5 million in the next 6 months from next season. Then the second 6 months of the season as well, you pay another 5. Then you do that again. So you pay the 30 million spread out over multiple installments over multiple years. And you then take into consideration, okay, next year, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be out from under the bank union debt. So that's 50 million extra. Then you also have the extra income coming in from that, and then that, and you have extra rental income from the hotel. So all these new revenue streams that we didn't have before, the club, I believe we talked about this a couple of months ago, the club income last season was $97 million US, I think. If you do you remember that?
Correct.
So
correct.
I don't think it's unrealistic to think that our income could increase to, let's say, $130 million or something like that. That is plausible, right? With extra income from all these
new sponsorships.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. So, and then on top of that, our expenses would get reduced by 50 million in interest payments. So suddenly you go from having $47 million. I'm just going to call it easy because, I'm just going to do dollar to euro. There's a difference, but whatever. So instead of going from having a budget of essentially 50 million, you could suddenly be looking at a budget of 110, 120, 130 million in the coming years without even qualifying for the Champions League. And then you can start competing with Fenerbahce and Galatasaray, who are spending 40, 50. They spent, I believe, Fener this past season spent 67 million or 65 million euros on fees. Galatasaray paid 60 million euros on fees. Beşiktaş paid somewhere around 20 million. So we are doing 1/3 of what they're spending. That's what we're spending on fees. And then we're not even talking about wages, because I think you recently posted the wages, the official wages that were disclosed. And of course, we know both Fener and Galatasaray aren't fully disclosing the wages because, they say, we are paying Icardi 6 million, but in reality, they're paying him 10 million. Same thing for Zaha, we're paying him 4.3 million, and in reality they're paying him 8 million, and so on and so on. But the official numbers, if I'm not mistaken, Fenerbahce was paying 97 million in, or 96, 97, something along those lines, in wages annually. Galatasaray somewhere around 90, and I think we were at 77. So we're really high as well. But they are, of course, paying more officially, and then non-officially, they are paying a bunch more still. But
the off-balance part. Yeah.
So really, what we're talking about right now, Ural, is what impact is this going to have on the club directly? And it's of course still a lot of ifs, because we still need to get out from under that debt and those those interest payments. And of course, we need to start seeing income from the Dikilitaş project, and we need to start seeing income coming from the hotel, because it's another thing that got approved. The rental agreements to be longer than 10 years, because Beşiktaş have an agreement right now, according to Serdar Adalı, with a world famous hotel chain who want to open a hotel in, I believe, the Beşiktaş Plaza, Süleyman Seba complex.
Correct.
And that, I believe, would be something along the lines of 4 million euros annually in extra income.
3.5.
Yeah. Oh, 3.5.
Yeah.
So 3.5 million euros extra annually.
And 50% on revenue, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's an additional amount of income, so you don't know how much that's gonna be, but So, these new revenue streams, maybe you can bring in more sponsors, also with the Dikilitaş. Maybe there's already some agreement signed beforehand that there's already going to be income flowing in straight away. I don't know about that, but
no, I don't think there will be. I don't think people asked about it, but I don't think it will be. And I think the type of deal doesn't allow that, to be honest. You can sell off plan, but it's too soon. I think it will at least take, if they're very fast, 6 months. I think it will be a year before you can sell off plan, which again is fine, because I think the calculation which you made shows then how you can plan. Like I said, liquidity planning and how to deal with these coming transfer windows. And you can be very it can be very risky in that sense, but that depends on how feasible Serdar Adalı's calculations are. But I think this is his plan. This is what he's trying to, so that he has more flexibility and can really build a team that can compete, etc. And again, this makes sense because I think there are two perspectives. One, the guy, the candidate with all his promises, and should he the type of plans he has and the external money he can put into the club, versus, okay, we've elected him now and this is what we have to deal with. So, because I think those are two different discussions. I think one, is he the ideal candidate at the moment, etc. That's a different discussion, because I think, his plans are not wrong in that sense, but I think expectations was completely different versus, okay, what he's now trying to do, does that make sense? And I think so, yes, because we don't have many, we don't have other options in that sense. So we can say no to everything, but that also means that there's no solution to this. And if you don't have the solution, then you cannot have these transfer commitments of 50 million or 20 million or whatever. So that also answers the question, okay, what can we do then, right? And you can also only buy people with players with a much smaller budget, which nobody wants. So that's basically...
then you're forced to. Well, I think regardless of whether or not the club is going to have significantly more money to spend in the future, we still need to be smart with our money. We still cannot. It doesn't mean because this has been approved now and the projections are for the income of the club to significantly increase in the coming years. It's at the end of the day, like you said, there's risk involved. It's still only a projection until you actually have that money coming in. It is not there, right? And you're essentially speculating on income that's coming, and you're relatively certain of it, but you're never 100% certain of it. So you are taking on a certain amount of risk. And if people who maybe think to themselves, okay, but how does that make sense? Okay, the Dikilitaş project got approved, and also I'm sure your Galatasaray and your Fenerbahce friends, guys, will be talking. If Beşiktaş now starts spending money, let's say Zambo Anguissa, okay, he's probably not coming, but let's use him as an example. If Beşiktaş announce him tomorrow for 18 million, you will have a lot of Fenerbahce and Galatasaray fans, and your friends probably. I don't know why you would keep them as friends. They're like animals, don't sleep with them, but whatever, you get the fleece. But they will be, where is Beşiktaş getting this money all of a sudden? And then, you know what? You can impress your friends because they never can answer you, where is Fenerbahce and Galatasaray getting the money? You can answer that question. You can say Beşiktaş are speculating on future revenue generated by the Dikilitaş project. And if you say it exactly like that, their heads will explode and they won't bother you anymore.
Top tip from Kaan. Yeah.
But yeah, I
No,
mean,
but,
yeah,
yeah.
that is essentially how you're explaining it, Ural, and I think it makes perfect sense because honestly, I was wondering the same thing. How does this make sense now? How is Beşiktaş suddenly going to be able to spend money that they weren't able to spend before? And you outlined it perfectly. And made it make sense. So thank you for that, Ural. You're always for the first time. This is the first time, Ural, that I'm not depressed after having a conversation with you.
Yeah, conversation with me. Yeah, so, up and up. This is the up and up. Yeah, that's great. Beşiktaş has a project approved. You are not depressed. Yeah, we're going the right way. That's good to hear. No, but yeah, I think this is the plan. It makes sense, and I think I understand what Ömer is saying because there's a reliability. I think there's a trust issue. Adal needs to gain it. He doesn't. He has not done nothing until now to earn it. I think every step he takes, so pure process-wise, I think it's just a lack of being an actual professional, understanding what you're doing, in my view. And I'm being very harsh about this, but that's also because, well, maybe from a professional standpoint, I think he can make his life much easier by doing things better. So there's some amateurism in my view, and that's easy to say because he's a big entrepreneur, etc., etc. So I understand all of that. It's easy coming from me. I accept that, but some things are very logical and also outlined by people talking during Congress today. If you had taken these steps, that would at least give some trust, more trust to the community.
Yeah.
And once you have that, you can build these products and you can prove it, and then it's all fine, right? Then they will back you, and then if a Beşiktaş fan will back you, then you'll have them for life. And then that's, I think, the biggest and the greatest thing you can have, because then you become an efsan type of person.
Yeah.
So and that's what really bugs me with the way this sport is moving, is that the plans as is are not that bad. Again, considering the situation that we are in, and that we don't have another candidate and a different board, but the way they're doing the things, they're organizing things.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to say about that.
Communication is absolutely horrendous. I think, when we made our first video a couple of weeks ago, Ural, we had all these massive question marks, and one by one, those question marks have largely been addressed, and I think our minds have been put at ease for the most part. But if they would have just come out with their outline straight away with those explanations that they were forced to give later down the road because people were rightfully reacting to it. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by how much of an uproar there was, because I was really worried, because this kind of stuff, this financial stuff, it's not very interesting to the most of the football fans. I think if you look at the ratio of views that we get on our match reaction videos versus our economical or financial analysis videos, these tend to get less views because it's a lot. It's intimidating. It's a lot of corporate speak that people don't really understand. And I think you do a fantastic job, Ural, at putting it in layman's terms so people can understand it. And I really want to thank you for that, because I think these interviews we've done over the last couple of months have been very valuable, I think, for the community to understand a little bit more of it. But I was pleasantly surprised by how many people reacted adversely to the fact that there was a lack of information out there, and that forced them into action. But it just goes to show you, it's just like with the whole capital injection. If they would have explained that properly, how people can go and buy stock, they would have done that from the get-go, and they would have coached people. I think we could have gotten a lot more money from that in the first place. If, for example, Galatasaray are planning on doing it as well now, and they have already partnered with one of the banks. I don't remember which one it was, but they're handling it much better. And of course, they have the advantage of, okay, we just saw Beşiktaş do it. They failed because they didn't do this, and that right. That's also, of course, one of the disadvantages of being first with these kinds of things, is that you are the one making all the mistakes and you can't really learn from the mistakes of others. But I bet you Galatasaray are gonna rake in the cash, and it's just gonna make our failure look even bigger with the whole. And if they would have just handled that properly, Beşiktaş would have been better off right now. And I think that's just a lesson that they keep learning the hard way each and every time, right?
I think that's my biggest gripe with this, because the steps that Galatasaray is taking, it's not that special, because somebody knowing these topics, like a professional understanding this capital injections, etc. These are the basics. Taking these steps that are necessary, these are the basics of doing this. So again, it just shows that that they're not how do you say that, eligible enough, or not professional is not the right word, but competent enough. They're not competent enough, in my view, if this is the outcome. And then they try to blame people, say, have you bought shares, etc., etc., or the market wasn't there. Then you don't do the.
A lot of people couldn't.
If the market is bad.
A lot of people couldn't buy the shares.
Exactly. So we have Papara on our sleeves, or as a sponsor. Why are they not involved? They're a sponsor. So why were they not? They have a platform. They sell shares where you can buy or sell shares. So these are all easy examples of how to organize things, and within the confines. Again, we also talked about last time that there are some rules that you have to abide to. So you cannot sort of market it just like selling shirts, so to say. So you have to. There are definitely some strict rules on that. But that doesn't mean you cannot do anything. And I think they failed very hard there, and it could have had a better outcome, for sure. I think you're right. If they've done this better, then I think it would have maybe doubled. Maybe it was 50 or 60 million we could have gotten from there, which would also have eased the hand of Adar or the club. Yeah. So there's a lot to say about that, to be honest. But I don't doubt intentions. So intentions is something that needs to be proved. Also,
I was going to say
reliability, etc.
I wanted to put a little conspiracy theory out there, but
okay.
Well, I was going to say maybe the fact that the whole capital injection didn't go that well only put more fuel behind approving Dikilitaş, right?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's a nice one. That's a nice one. So let's fail on the capital increase, and then try to get this project approved as quickly as possible without the right setup,
without too much scrutiny.
Hey. But there's no proof. So
no, of course, pure speculation. Right now, I think Seladal in the last couple of weeks has been heckling the manipulation on social media, and people coming out with wild theories like that's a wild theory. I have absolutely no proof. I don't even have an indication. It's just a wild theory at the moment. I want to make that clear. But you are enabling people to come up with these types of theories because you're not explaining things properly, and it is in a way your own responsibility. You are the president of the club. You need to be transparent, and also communication is very important. And that, I think, is one of the biggest failures so far of Serdar Adalı's board, is that the communication is bad. I think maybe their planning is good. Like you said, a lot of these plans, once properly explained, make sense. And also, once properly explained, don't look half-assed. But when their first communication of projects comes out, you're always thinking to yourself, they just kind of flubbed that together. And also the fact that they explain it over the course of 2-3 weeks kind of makes you think, I guess they're just kind of, tackling it as it comes and just figuring it out as they go along. I mean, you're only kind of fueling that sort of speculation, right?
Total shit show. I'm sorry, but it's a total shit show. The way that we, the whole process up to the capital increase, but also this now again, I think it's a total shit show. They just presented 6 articles. They said, okay, this is what we want to ask. These are the dates, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then everybody was completely surprised. That even internally, the audit board, audit, They asked a lot of questions, a lot of documents. Okay, we need to prepare our audit report. We need information to be able to present that at the divan, at the assembly there, which was moved up. So it was earlier, and they couldn't finish it in time. And they were like, okay, but we don't have all the documentation. And still, it was only presented or published to yesterday or 2 days ago, the audit report. There's a huge list of documents that weren't provided by the board, and even your own audit couldn't go to all of your plans and say, okay, it makes sense or doesn't make sense.
Which only enforces.
They gave an opinion on things.
Yeah. It only enforces the idea
it
just enforces the idea that they're kind of rushing things and they're just, taking it as it comes almost. Like they're on the go. Like it's like they're making their homework while biking to school. Like they're on their bike writing their homework essentially while on their way to school. That's how this comes across, right? And sorry to cut you off there, Ural, but like, yeah.
No, but that's exactly my point. Yeah, no, but that's what's happening now, and let's not forget, because there's also a lot of emotional manipulation in my view. If you have these type of arguments and comments on this, but I think that's completely out of order. Because I think it's very factual and rightfully so to point this out and say, okay, the steps that you're taking are not the right ones, because if you look at the articles that are changed, if you would have thought a little bit, if you have thought this through or talked with sort of competent people, you've already taken those out, and then you would have, just like you said, there would be no comment, or there would be comments on social media, but they wouldn't have. They would only have subjective comments.
Exactly.
But now they have objective comments.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole. And then you make your life very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, just our first episode that we did on this was full of us questioning these decisions, and of course, you have a background in legal and in finance, but I don't. And my first reaction was, what, you're gonna sell club stock and you're gonna leverage it for a potential loan or whatever? And I mean, like, only the 19%, right? Not the full 70%, and certainly not, the 51% majority, right? I mean, if I can think of that, then your people who are writing these things out, who are supposed to have know-how, they're certainly supposed to think of this and include that, and then you can avoid a lot of this social media angst, but also just, I mean, justifiably so. I think that people are questioning and scrutinizing it, and I think to call it manipulation and all that kind of stuff is in itself manipulation, and like you said, emotional blackmail to an extent. And I did lead the show off with saying, for example, fear mongering is often used to get a public behind you to go to war, for example, which is very topical right now. But in this sense, I think it's also a form of fear mongering. But I do believe, from my own personal point of view, I do believe it's justified, because I don't see a way out for the club otherwise right now. Whereas, I mean, in the cases of past wars like Vietnam, Iraq, all that kind of stuff, I think there were lots of different better options at the time. I don't think Beşiktaş have a better option right now. And even, we talked about this, of course, in the past with Hüseyin Yücel's plan. And we talked about this in our last episode as well. I think Hüseyin Yücel's plan was good to get out from under the bank debt. But I think this Dikilitaş project is better long-term for the club, because not only will we get out of the bank union debt, but also the club will generate consistent income, because they're selling up to 125 million worth, and then the rest of that property will be rented out and will provide a constant revenue stream for the club. So it's not just 200 million or whatever they're expecting or projecting. It's also passive income for the future of the club. So it's long term. It's much better, I think, than Yücel's plan. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you say Yücel's plans. You need to compare that to the capital increase.
Yeah,
I think that's sort of a better comparison, because Yücel was about, okay, I'm going to ask people to lend us money or donate, and what Adal did was basically the same, right? In the end,
yeah.
He basically asked for a donation. Let's be honest. Asking people to buy these shares with everything that's going on, it's in my view, it's not an investment. It was a donation. I think you also said it in previous episodes. You said, okay, yeah, then just why deal with this? Just ask everybody a donation, and you'll have the same result.
Yeah.
Type of thing, or even a better result.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you can include people from outside. Like, for example, you and me, we could not buy stock because we don't have a Turkish bank account. And we don't, so like we could not help. And for example, if they would have said like with the whole FEDA thing, and this I've always been against people who say, oh, Beşiktaş just need to go through a FEDA 2.0. And I don't agree with that. Because I don't think Beşiktaş can afford to do that again in the same way that they did the first time around, where it essentially meant downsizing and taking step back and blah, blah, blah. I think Beşiktaş can't do that right now. But what Beşiktaş can do is still do a campaign like that and ask fans to give money. But you can give them something in exchange. So for example, I'm just going to say something like for 200 or for 100 euros, you donate and you get like a t-shirt that says I donated, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
You come up with some fancy slogan and then you get that or something as a thank you essentially. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with this, but
So that's the again, Adala was very dismissive of the plan of using UJL, saying, okay, that's not feasible, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And essentially, he did the same because because of what we just said. So I really think that Hüseyin Yücel's plan was better, but equally, it would have been smart if he moved into this Dikilitaş project, right? Let's say Hüseyin Yücel was there, and he would have done his campaign, and he would have gotten us out of the bank loan. Then it still would have been a good idea to Dikilitaş. Could you then structure it differently? I think so. More beneficial for the club, meaning instead of selling those assets, you just ensure that it's developed and then fully rent it out, right? You don't lose ownership at all. That could have been done. Can that be done at the moment? Not without external funding or with people sort of donating money, etc., making the construction possible. You could still structure differently, but I don't think that other or his board have that. I don't think they're competent enough to do that, right? You could do an investment fund type of thing, make that construction, and then repay based on those rental revenues instead of selling it. But the problem again is still you need to repay that 125 million. So you can say a lot about these things, but this is the situation we're in. Can you do it differently? Yes. But in the end, I think even on the Hüseyin Yücel or Fikret Orman, etc., it makes sense to do this Dikilitaş project. Because it's land you cannot.
100%. They are essentially creating a very valuable asset for the club that they didn't have before. So I think the Dikilitaş project is a net positive, as long as it doesn't turn out like Fulya, where it turns out that all the profitable. The profitable aspect of the whole project doesn't go to Beşiktaş, it goes to the other people involved. So, like, for example, we're partnering with construction companies now, and, like, I think one of the things that was said back in the day was, so in Fulya, they built, like, these residential areas or whatever, or commercial zones, and Beşiktaş had a right to 60% of it or whatever, just saying random numbers. But essentially what they got was the parking lot. They got the parking lot, whereas the construction companies and all that kind of stuff, they got the commercial stuff like the shopping center, hospital, whatever, you know.
The tallest towers.
Yeah, exactly. Like the stuff that actually brought in the money went to those partners, whereas Beşiktaş was left with just the parking lot, which revenue-wise brought in a fraction of what the other stuff brought in. So as long as you don't get a similar situation there with this whole Dikilitaş project, where, for example, Beşiktaş are just left with getting the parking lot and not actually the apartment complexes or whatever, that would be bad. But I don't think that's going to happen. There's a question, by the way, for you. If you want me, I'll read it out to you from Eren. He says, "Hi Ural, you recently said that it's not surprising that Beşiktaş's commercial partners have taken advantage of the club because the club was naive enough to undervalue its assets. Are we still doing this?
It's a very good question, because that's also a big question mark on, and these articles were discussed and these deals were discussed. Because with Dikilitaş, we haven't seen the calculation other than a very high over number, 400 million revenue, 200 million profit, or 450 million profit. Although it didn't explain the difference, the 50 million, he said, I'm just conservatively mentioning 150 million, but we are aiming for much higher. What's the actual value? We haven't seen that calculation. We haven't seen that business case. So can I now say, are we still doing this? I really don't know. The thing is, though, that he works with Emrah Konut. I think there will be a sort of a real estate company set up. So I understand there will be reports, also an evaluation. There will be a calculation on this. So that needs to pan out, right? There's a lot of scrutiny from the community, from the committee members. So I think that should pan out. Are we doing the same thing now with Beşiktaş Plaza? And with Beşiktaş Plaza, it's a bigger question mark. It's better than what we can get now, but is that then the best deal at the moment? So he said he will do a tender on Beşiktaş Plaza. So that's a good promise. He said, okay, even if you give me the right to do a 25-year contract with a hotel, I will do it under a tender. So if somebody comes with a better offer, we can have a look, etc. So that's a little bit promising. Well, that's promising in my view that he wants to do that and not say, okay, but I have a deal ready, so I'm just going to move with that. With the gas station and with Asçıoğlu, it's evident, right? We've undervalued it grossly, and it still is. So again, the best thing is get out of those contracts and have new contracts with a proper inflation clause, with a proper revaluation clause, and then we should be okay with the valuation of these assets and get the proper proceeds from this. I think those are the most important elements that need to be there. He has mentioned that in the settlement agreement it would be there. I think the settlement agreements itself are grossly undervaluing our assets, but if they put those elements in new contracts, I think we should be okay. And with the tender for Beşiktaş Plaza, I think that gives a little bit of peace of mind that we will get a good commercial offer. Maybe not the best, but I think at least a good commercial offer. So, but we need to be diligent, the club needs to be diligent, and we need to be diligent on this, because you see, right, it can easily be given away with one signature, not even asking the assembly, and then we discuss this 10 years later. We will still be discussing these types of contracts, and that's the problem here.
Yeah, so it's positive, of course, that now the members got their vote and got their say. Final thoughts on all of this, Ural. How do you think this is going to impact the club long term? Are you positive about it? Do you think the club can start moving forward for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, because on the one hand, I don't know if after this vote, a sort of a legal process will be started by some members who disagree. So I don't think this will be the end of the discussion in that sense. On the other hand, I'm happy that there's at least a plan and a roadmap of what to do in the coming months. I still don't trust the board in the sense that they will do that. These are the right people to do it. I'm hugely skeptical because of the reason I just explained, the way they're doing things, not even the plans itself, but the way they're doing things. I'm hugely skeptical about the current board. So we need to see it step by step. But yeah, is this the best outcome, or is this the best board we have? I would say no at the moment. And we'll need to see half a year from now, a year from now, where we are. But I also wouldn't be surprised if I don't know, we will end up in chaos again, because things are not managed well. But at least we have a roadmap now of what we are doing on the legal and the financial side, and that should give a little bit of peace of mind, I would say, and that people can focus on football and transfers and things like that, instead of these topics. So that's what I really hope.
Yeah, and that's also something Sedel Adale mentioned in, I believe, one of his statements in recent days is, I know you are tired of hearing we don't have any money, Beşiktaş are financially constrained, we can't do this, we can't do that. I know you're tired of hearing that. And we are, right? We're so tired of hearing that. But then there's also the other side of the coin. If this works out the way we want and we don't have to hear anymore about how Beşiktaş are poor, Beşiktaş don't have money, Beşiktaş can't afford that, that's great if we can get rid of that, but we don't want to exchange it into, oh, we bought the wrong player again and we got this and that, like Fenerbahçe. With Fenerbahçe, you never hear this kind of stuff like, oh, they don't have money, oh, this, oh, that. You never hear that. You never hear the whining about finances. But they haven't won a single title in 10 years. And that is because they have money, but they spend it really stupidly. You know? And it's great that we now finally have a light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we can get to that end of the tunnel and get rid of this, and that in a couple of years we will this will be a long forgotten, like, oh, do you remember those times when we were worried about, oh, we can't afford a 5 million player, and now look at us now, we're signing players 20-25 million every summer without a problem. That's fun. That would be great. But also, if you're going to spend that money on somebody who is 30, 31 years old, past his prime, blah, blah, blah, blah, blah, then, you can start signing 37-year-old Edin Dzeko and 35-year-old Dusan Tadic. And don't get me wrong, I think Tadic is a fantastic player. But, like, the point stands, Fenerbahçe, who were they negotiating a couple of days ago? Last week, they were in for Kyle Walker, 34, 35 years old. Every other day you see them getting linked to another 30-plus-year-old player. And now recently we are getting linked with Raheem Sterling, for example. Like, if that's going to be our transfer policy with the Dikilitaş money in het vooruitzicht, how should I say that in English? With the projection of having with the projection of having more income coming, we start spending more money. If we're gonna start spending that on a guy who just had a bad season at Arsenal, didn't have a great season at Chelsea before that, is on the wrong side of 30, like, that is not the way. You also need to, if more money becomes available now, let's do what smart clubs are doing. Let's do what Celtic does. Let's do what Club Brugge does. Let's stop trying to fight fire with fire. Galatasaray and Fenerbahçe have their transfer policies. They always try to get these big name players that are over the hill. And don't get me wrong, for example, Dries Mertens, I think he did a great job at Galatasaray, but we need to stop going after players like that. We need to start going after young, hungry players, or players in their prime who aren't just out for a last payday. So even if all of this turns out well, and all the promises that were made, the financial promises that were made are kept, and we get that 200 million, that's great. But if we spend it on shit, then it doesn't matter. Because then you're just exchanging Beşiktaş don't have any money problem for, Beşiktaş don't have any vision. And they can't find a good player and blah, and blah, and blah. So we have to do...
They'll be gone in a second. That money will be gone in 1 to 2 seasons.
Oh, yeah, of course, 200 million. That's easy to spend, right? You can just sign,
that's the danger.
Sign a couple of Ciro Immobiles and there you go.
So we're not getting Ronaldo because...
Well, I mean, that would be a good way to spend that money straight away. Just bring in Ronaldo for 2 seasons. Goodbye, 200 million.
Yeah, hey, come on, we have money. We said yes, we have money right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't yet, but we are projecting to have money. Anyway, Ural, I want to thank you very much for your time and also for covering and watching and keeping us up to date on this whole Congress. I had something to do in the morning, so I wasn't able to see the first couple of hours. And honestly, after like half an hour, I was already tired of it with all those speeches. And you diligently continued to watch and keep everyone updated on what was going on in our WhatsApp community group chat, which I really appreciate. And then on top of that, you came onto the stream now to explain it all to us, and hopefully everyone learned something more and feels a little bit more assured about things, but of course we'll have to wait and see how it all turns out. And hopefully it'll go the right way. But at least, like I said, we now have a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you want to become part of that group chat, by the way, where Ural and Ömer and Eren and so many others who you see on our live chat daily, daily, on all our live chats, on our live streams, come and join that WhatsApp group chat. Become a Patreon member on patreon.com/Beşiktaş podcast for just $1.99 a month. Or you can become a YouTube member. Just hit the join button. That just costs €1, I believe. And then you also gain access to a bunch of new features on YouTube. For example, you gain a nice badge in the live chat next to your name, a loyalty badge, which also changes as you are a member for longer. And on Patreon, you get lots of extra content, including a weekly VIP podcast, the Schwarting Report, which Ural, you also are going to start contributing to more consistently. You did your first contribution this past month. One upcoming in the near future, of course. Sinan Schwarting, of course, my co-host since 2018. He hosts the Schwarting Report, and basically what he does is he grades the players, the manager, the board for their performance in the past month. So he does that monthly, and Ural also will send in his thoughts on mainly the performance of the board, I believe, Ural. Lots of extra content on the VIP side of things, so go and check that out. But please, most importantly of all, like, comment and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of any future streams and or videos that we upload. And I would like to thank every single one of you for watching, and see you again next time. Well, do you want to do the honors?
Oh wow, but only one person can do that, right?
No, I am giving you how did it call it? Emergency powers.
Oh wow, just like the board almost. No, but again, my pleasure, guys. Check it out. It's very fun in the WhatsApp group, especially if you have especially for the fanatic Beşiktaş fan. It's a very nice community. Everything that Kaan just listed. Well, thank you guys for enabling this community and having this podcast. I need to have a different outro. I think, as we all know, en büyük Beşiktaş.